come on, let's be honest. We both said this earlier. It wasn't an attempt to overthrow the government. And let me tell you this right now.
Really? Why were they there? Why were they there then?
They were there to protest, of course.
Protest what? Protest what?
What they believed was a rigged election.
Right. So they were there, stormed
there to overthrow the government.
What were they trying to stop?
That would argue the position that they had a plan. That would argue the position that they had some sort of thing aligned.
What were they trying to do that?
I think they were throwing a tantrum. That's what I think it was.
What were they trying to do that day? I'll give you a hint.
I don't think they even know. I think they were trying to send a message.
To stop, and they almost did. They were trying to stop the certification of votes where it was delayed. That's what they were trying to do. And that's what I mean by trying to overthrow a free and fair election. That's why they were there.
I'll give you this, okay? If there was anybody in J6 that actually believed that they as individuals had some sort of ability to overthrow the government, stop the election, or prevent it from being counted, then you're right. Those people are idiots.
They were chanting.
But I don't believe that's actually the case.
They were chanting, hang Mike Pence. They were chanting about hanging the vice president.
Yeah, well, there's some arguments about that as well, about Antifa being inserted into the crowd that were promoting. Okay, well, then you can say it's not true. But I'm saying I've seen sources that reflect otherwise.
I'd love to know what sources those are, because I can tell you right now, there's no legitimate source that said Antifa.
Oh, there's video of known Antifa residents like actually changing clothes into MAGA wear under a tree. There's a video of that.
Well, I mean, if there's a video of someone changing clothes under a tree, it doesn't change my position at all.
No, I know, but I'm saying it was clearly Antifa, and they're known Antifa.
Why do you defend Ashli Babbitt?
You know what? It's not about defending her. I think that she was murdered in cold blood. I think.
Okay, well, the investigation proved otherwise.
I know the investigation proved otherwise, but that also proves my position earlier stated when I said to give a blanket authority to all jurisdiction and all that apply the law as they see it against those on the side.
Let's just say you're at a police car, I don't know, or some sort of secure checkpoint.
Well, I would caution you where you're going right now, because the same argument is being levied from the right against persecution of innocent blacks that get gunned down as well, because they happen to be, let's say, near a battle zone or near an area where there's obviously chaos.
I'd have to look at a specific.
So I'm just saying, like, you can go in both directions. But if you look at the video, if you watch the video, that was a trained. I mean, the guy had like 20 plus years of service in the law, and then I believe he was ex-military as well. Yep. To argue the position that he didn't understand the threat, as it were, right? If you watch the video, I believe she was shot in the head, which makes me, in the neck, whatever. She stands up, I believe, on somebody's shoulder, or she hoists herself up off of somebody.
After a gun was pointed at her and somebody said there's a gun, it didn't deter her from doing what she was doing, which was 10 feet away from politicians.
I'm not saying what she did was not intelligent, but it doesn't justify murder. It doesn't justify.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. If they broke through that window, they were 10 feet away from those politicians. If they broke through that window, what do you think those?
What would have happened if all police and all military personnel were ordered to evacuate the building?
What does that have to do with my question? I'm confused. They had to get politicians out of the building.
What I'm arguing is, okay, fair. So do you think that the politicians would have been attacked?
100%. Okay, there would have been absolutely. There were people. There were at least a dozen people with weapons. I hear the argument from the right that nobody had weapons. That's also not true. There were people that were chanting "Hang Mike Pence."
But then we can just fundamentally agree to disagree, because I do not believe.
So they would have just shook their hand. Do you think they would have just shook Nancy Pelosi?
No, but I don't believe they would have strung them up on ropes like the left is trying to portray it was going to happen.
What would they have done then? What would they have done? Just had a conversation.
It's not. How many incidences can you point to in the last 100 years where the right, specifically the right, the conservative right, not the far right?
How many times have we had? I know you don't.
Have they strung up politicians? Have they killed, assaulted, or maimed politicians? How many times? Because I can obviously point recently to attempted executions on our own president.
When was there a time? I know you don't like to refer it as an insurrection. I don't really care the way people define it, but has anything like that ever happened in our lifetime?
In our lifetime, no.
No, exactly. So you're making my point for me. This was an extenuating circumstance. You had a mob of people, and I know we disagree on this. I don't feel bad for Ashli Babbitt. She did it to herself. That's number one. Number two.
I mean, see, that's a horrible thing to say, though.
I think it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing what she did.
What
you're
doing is very dangerous, because you're taking a principled approach by saying, I don't care that somebody got killed. But then
I do care.
If you're going to take that opinion and approach,
I do care.
You have to comprehend. You have to understand, when you see the right retaliate in the fashion that it's moving in, you cannot be shocked when people, you say you're an independent, but when you say, I think she got what she deserved, well, then you cannot be shocked when you have people on the right that argue the same contention. We will never reach this equality.
Which case? I don't care what their political background is. If somebody is doing what Ashli Babbitt was doing and dumb enough to do what she was doing,
I mean, we can point to the Rittenhouse. We can point to the Rittenhouse case.
Okay, what about Kyle Rittenhouse? He wasn't convicted of a crime, was he?
No, but do you believe the people that were shot by Rittenhouse deserved what they got?
I would say the first guy who got into it with Kyle Rittenhouse was a very ignorant person, and he probably got what he deserved. Here's the problem with the. Here's the problem
Fair
with
enough.
the.
I mean, at least you're consistent.
Here's
I mean,
the problem.
You're pretty callous all around.
Here's the problem with the other two people that were shot.
Well, I believe one of them pulled a gun on
Let me hear me out on this.
Okay.
When you're in a very serious situation, in that case, that was a very dangerous situation, and you see a 17-year-old in camouflage with a gun, and you hear gun popping going off, I believe the other two, not the first guy, but the next two, believed it was an active shooter situation. That's what I believe. Now, would I have advised them to have done what they have done? No, probably not. I would have told them to get the hell out of the area. But Kyle Rittenhouse should have never been there. And we also know, and by the way, Kyle Rittenhouse is an idiot. We know a week before, well, I'll give you the reason why I say that. Yeah. A week before, he's caught on video watching people shoplift out of a pharmacy, saying he was dreaming about killing them and shooting them. That's not what a normal 17-year-old, there's video of it. You could just go on YouTube. He admitted that he should have never been there. A 17-year-old should not, with an AR-15, showing up to a violent.
I don't disagree that he. I don't disagree with your position that he shouldn't be there, but I mean, here's the thing, Brian. At least you're fair and consistent when you take your opinion on, whether or not someone deserves to be shot and killed, and But again, I think it aids to my argument. It's very disheartening. It's very disheartening.
So, Richie, here's where Richie, can I just say this real quick?
Of violence.
Sure. Richie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me preface this. It's very sad what happened to Ashli Babbitt. Here's why I say that. She served the country, which I will always respect anybody who serves, and she was brainwashed. You talk about the media. She is one of those people that was brainwashed just based on her YouTube videos. She said a lot of crazy stuff. By the way, not against the law to do that. If she wanted to be on a public sidewalk and scream nonsense, she had the right to do that, but she wasn't doing that. She was in a place where she shouldn't have been. She was warned that there was a gun pointed at her to stand back by law enforcement. She didn't do it, and that was investigated. Now, if you don't agree with the investigation...
Do you believe the White House belongs to the politicians that occupy it, or do you believe it belongs to the American citizenry?
Well, the law as it stands is they were not allowed to be in those specific areas, and they were told to stand back, and they did not do it. So you can't just waltz into the House chamber anytime you want.
Earlier, you brought up the Constitution and asked me if I believed in the, and I obviously said I disagree with a lot of the Constitution. Would you argue that you yourself are a constitutionalist, or would you say that you don't agree with some of the
reason why I might not always agree with everything, but the reason why I bring up the Constitution is because a lot of people on the far right, I know you're not necessarily a Trump supporter now, but a lot of the Trump supporters like to always bring up the Constitution when Donald Trump
are not far right either. They're, I'd like to usurp that definition and role, because they're definitely not far right.
Okay, well, Richie, that may or may not be true, but for argument's sake, the reason why I bring up the Constitution is because Donald Trump is breaking our Constitution every day. He's above the law. He was given immunity. He's not giving people due process, and I have a serious problem with that. And by the way, I also don't think a 34-count felon should be. Any felon should be the president of the United States. If you're a felon, you're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to buy a gun. You certainly shouldn't be allowed to be the president of the United States.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The more power to you to take a principled stance and stand behind your conviction and words. But at the end of the day, you said you're independent. I think maybe you're a little more left-leaning than you give on
social issues. Sure,
which is fine, but
I did not vote for Barack Obama.
I try to implore you and your listeners and anybody else who kind of wants to take a tribal or position against any and all other Americans who they believe don't agree with them. Consider your own tribalism. Consider what you would do in those positions. Consider what you would do. You said that Ashli Babbitt was brainwashed, okay?
Absolutely.
You're not. Here's the thing. If you believe that you yourself are immune to brainwash, you yourself are brainwashed.
No,
You
I'm
have
not.
kid yourself into believing that
I would
if
never
you're
make
immune.
the case. I would never make
But
the
my
case for
point
that,
is that
but I
if
also
you can
wouldn't start.
acknowledge the fact that you're not immune to being brainwashed, then consider the humanity of all Americans. Consider the humanity and the purpose behind the reactionary movement of all Americans. I
Okay,
implore you.
but Rich, even if you are brainwashed, that is not an excuse to do what Ashli Babbitt did that day. It's also not an excuse for the January 6ers to beat police officers. It's not an excuse to try
Obviously, I don't agree that she was brainwashed, and I'm not saying that I agree with that either. I mean, again, you have to lean into the situation, as it were, to put this sort of blanket, absolute approach to looking at a situation without looking at the specific nuances, the energy, the chaos, the melee. We're just never going to agree on this. I've personally been in these environments where, when chaos is ensuing all around you, you're hearing screaming and kicking and people yelling slurs. You're getting hit by all directions. It disorients you. It changes your sort of your tone of self. It kind of turns you into something that
people
you
were
didn't
yelling
expect
slurs
to be.
at people were yelling slurs at the white supremacists, some of whom stormed the Capitol on January 6th, and that's a defense to beat a cop. Like I don't
No,
understand.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying in culmination of all things that can be identified as chaos, when you're in that situation, I assure you, whatever promises you've made to yourself, meaning that you can tell yourself now, I would never do anything like that.
No, I
You
wouldn't.
just don't know.
No,
You
I
just
do.
don't know.
I do. I would never beat a police officer. I would never believe a guy like Donald Trump when he says the election was
I'm not
rigged.
saying necessarily a police officer, but you might beat an innocent person.
No, I've never been charged with a crime in my entire life. So the answer is no. I don't know if you have, but I
No,
haven't.
I haven't. But at the same time, I can understand human nature. I
I
can
could also
understand the
understand their.
reactionary
Well,
movement.
that might be
And
true,
I
but
understand it both on the left and the right. And that's what I try to portray is I understand reactionary movements on both sides of the aisle. Okay.
I don't think it's ever excusable as to be defined as a reactionary movement to storm the Capitol, beat cops. I don't think violence is ever defended by reactionary movement.
At what point is it
If
justifiable?
you feel like your life is in danger and it's self-defense, that's the only time it's ever okay.
So
To
if they're you already admitted they're brainwashed, they already believe their life is in danger, right? They
no,
already
they just
believe their life is in
no, I don't
danger.
believe that. No, I don't believe that.
So you don't believe that they believe their life's in danger?
It
Well,
has
you
to be.
haven't hung out with these people. I
First of
promise
all,
you, they
first of
genuinely
all,
believe
well,
that. Okay.
then they're mentally ill. These people. But first of all,
That's just you're just moving the marker,
well,
though.
just because you believe your life is in danger doesn't mean legally. It
Can't
has
you
to be
see that
proven.
you're taking a position of
No,
authority over?
no. It has to be proven
You
in a
are.
court
You're
of
taking a
law.
moral position
It
of
has to
authority.
be. It has to be proven in a court of law that your life was in danger and that your behavior, or in this case, beating police officers, was legitimate because a police officer put your life in danger and it was proven in a court of law. Just because you believe something, that doesn't give you the right to break the law. Just because I have a belief that I don't like a
I have
Trump
to continue
supporter,
to play devil's advocate. We go
sure,
back to
sure.
referencing you being a secular Jew, and I'm sure you have roots in Eastern Europe or people who were persecuted during the early 1900s. I'm sure you have ancestors. I wonder if those people were here today, if they would agree with your approach. If they
I
would
really
agree,
don't care. I wouldn't care.
you should
I
care.
don't care.
You should care. You
No,
should
I
care
don't.
because the
No, I don't.
perspective and the position of all peoples that feel persecuted, left out, and abandoned are valid to be heard.
Just because you feel a way doesn't give you the right to break the law and assault people. And if anybody disagrees with me on that, this is where just because their religion might be the same as mine, I'm not even a religious person. I don't care, Rich.
That's why I said you're secular.
I don't care what somebody's religion is, what the color of their skin is. Just because you believe something doesn't give you the right to storm the Capitol, whether you're right or wrong. And they were wrong because Trump did not win in 2020. But even if they were right, that doesn't give you the right to physically assault people. It doesn't give you the right to do that and storm the Capitol. I don't know why. I don't know what the argument is there. It doesn't give you, just because you believe something doesn't give you the right to be violent and attack people. I don't care what religion you are. What the color of your skin is.
By that position that you're taking is, I would argue, is bordering on a real pacifist approach to all things maybe unjust or
Maybe
unequal.
it's just respect of the law. Maybe you think. Maybe
No,
I just
but
respect the rule
again,
of law.
we go full circle to like, how do you define justifying specific laws, and why should you as an individual adhere to all laws that you don't agree with?
Well, just because you don't agree with the law, are you saying it's okay to break it then? So I can go 150
I'm not
miles an
saying
hour.
it's okay to break
You
it.
know,
I'm saying I understand when
okay.
somebody feels
Understand.
persecuted,
All right,
why
so
they
let's
had a
just say
retaliatory effort.
I believe in my belief system that you should be allowed to be drunk and drive. So are you going to defend me now when I go out on the road tonight, which I wouldn't, by the way, and drive drunk? That's really what
I
you're
think you're
saying here.
creating a straw man argument. I think
No,
that
I'm
there's a
not.
lot. There's no, well, technically by definition you are, but specifically, I think that you're again reducing an entire movement of people that in their spirit, in their soul, feel one way, feel left out, feel persecuted, feel abandoned in their country, in a country that they worked, and in terms of Ashli Babbitt, a country that they served for, that they bled for, they feel abandoned and they don't see a way out. That's a
Mhm.
little different than I think I should drive drunk. That's a little that's
Maybe I
really
feel abandoned.
reducing it.
Maybe my family abandoned me. How do you know my personal situation? I can feel abandoned. So now the debt.
Again, we're
So now
talking
the
about a collective movement versus an
okay,
an
well, I feel
individual
I was
movement.
abandoned because of what happened in the Holocaust, and 7 million Jews died. So that gives me the right to storm the Capitol or drive drunk.
If
I
you
feel abandoned,
fine,
Rich.
fine, if you believe that the Holocaust happened, that your ancestors were persecuted, and
Hmm.
you visually see similarities of what you would identify as similar cases that created
Anti-Semitism.
a fascist.
There are
Okay,
people. Sure.
okay. You're proving my argument though. You see symptoms of what happened during that time that caused the persecution of your people, and you said because of these symptoms and because of what I see coming down the pipeline, I'm going to retaliate in this way.
No,
Yes,
that's
you are
not what I'm saying.
100% justified.
Well, that's again, with respect, that's the point I was trying to make. That's ridiculous. So now you're saying any Jew out there that feels abandoned because of what happened in the
No, I'm
Holocaust,
not saying that they
that's
should do
ridiculous.
these things. I'm saying I get it. Like it's not shocking to me. Like
So,
J6 happening
so if
is
a
not
Jewish,
shocking. It's
so
actually more shocking to me that people are shocked that J6 happened. From my purview, when you actually look at extreme poverty levels, when you look at people out of work, out of service, out of the line of conversation or being considered, and you think, wow, their lineage and their ancestry has been here 10 to 15 generations. They've been completely abandoned, and then you have this row of immigrants being issued, and even by the Trump administration being upheld, given grants, given diplomacy, given all this opportunity, while Americans, regardless if they're black, white, or whatever, are suffering in the dredges. I'm shocked. Not J6 isn't happening every day. I mean, for Christ's sake, how long do we have to live this way before people actually get angry? It's not shocking. And you shouldn't be shocked when something like J6 happens. You should actually be shocked that people aren't more upset. I mean, for Christ's sake, I've been on a tirade about this AI thing, and no one seems to give a damn. I don't know how your opinion or approach is about AI and
my,
AI takeover
so,
or robotics,
so,
but
so that
everyone's kind of just in this matrix, in this complacency, kind of being drudged along in this sort of
I'll give you
vegetative
some things.
state.
I'll give you some things that I think are more prevalent than AI. There are 17 million people that are going to lose their health care coverage, and they are going to
I
die.
don't disagree with you though. Like I don't
There are
disagree
a
with you.
lot of
It's also a problem.
the top 1%. Yeah, but yeah, I think there are two different problems that I think some should be prioritized higher than others. Like, for example, I want everyone to get due process in this country. I don't want the biggest tax breaks for the top 1%. I want everybody to be able to live and be able to get the health care that they deserve, especially veterans and people that are suffering, that are living paycheck to paycheck. That is not what the Trump administration is doing. So I have high further
I
concerns
definitely don't
of
disagree
that.
with you on veterans. That's 100% sure.
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I don't
no matter
disagree
who
with
you
you.
are, especially veterans, but that to me is more prevalent. And by the way, the guy who you voted for called veterans suckers and losers, and he dodged the military multiple times. So again, I know you're not a Trump supporter
I think
now.
that's taken out of context. That
Well,
particular statement.
according to General Kelly, who was I believe a 4-star general, he said that's exactly what Trump said, and he also said on tape, on video, that he didn't respect John McCain as a POW
No,
because he was
the
captured.
reason why I'm arguing about AI or whatever is because the conversation about race, the conversation about the insurrection, I mean, these are such reductive arguments, and I think they're distractions ultimately. I think we need to move our focus away from this to even with the immigration thing, I think that's being used as a tactic. The reason why I bring up Obama being the deportation king is because I want people to understand that there was no media movement to sensationalize
I'll
what he
give
was
you the
doing to
reason why.
immigrants.
I'll give you the reason
Yeah,
why.
because he wasn't tyrannical in his approach and his personality, and he didn't say such
It wasn't
horrific,
just
mean
that.
things.
It wasn't
I think
just
it's a
that.
big part of it.
I think
Absolutely.
that might be a small part of it, but I can tell you what Barack Obama didn't do. He wasn't taking nonviolent criminals to some of the highest maximum security prisons in the land. He didn't have ICE
I mean,
agents.
I don't know about the highest. Well, I'll tell you right now.
El Salvador, the El Salvador
Some
prisons.
people in very poor areas of Central America would argue they'd rather be put in a prison than be put in specific areas of Central America where the cartels are running their cities and
Well, here's
their
what I
aunts
can
and
tell
uncles
you.
are being skinned alive. So
The El Salvador prison is one of the highest maximum security prisons in the world. Meanwhile,
he
again, the
isn't
guy,
sending mass people there, though. I think you're trying to give this impression that he's
there
sending
are
a
people that
huge
are being
percentage.
deported
It's
into
a
places in
very, very
Lebanon.
minutiae percentage.
I
I
don't
don't
care.
know that they're not criminals either. I've never
Okay,
heard
well,
that
we do know
argument.
that 60% of the people that were sent to El Salvador have never been convicted of a violent crime in their life.
But see,
We also,
you kind of just proved my point earlier. You said convicted of a violent crime. You
Mhm.
you are giving credence to a system that determines what is right and wrong based off the law as they see fit. There may be someone from a different purview that said, "Hey, these people did do A, B, or C," and maybe they scoffed the law,
so you
or
don't
maybe
believe at
the
all in our justice
but
system. And if
but
somebody
maybe the idea of coming into this country undocumented and illegally is a big enough crime in and of itself to justify any sort of persecution and criminal charges
it's not a
against a
violent
person.
crime and it's not considered a felony.
But I'm arguing that maybe we should consider to elevate the
Okay,
severity
well,
of
that's
it.
an argument you could have with our court system, but right now it's not a felony. And I can tell you, if you don't commit a violent crime in this country, I don't believe you should be sent to a place like El Salvador. If you've lived in this country for decades, there should be a pathway to citizenship if you haven't committed a violent crime. And I don't want ICE agents across the
I
country
mean, we can agree to disagree.
in some
Eventually.
instances not identifying themselves, which is, by the way, illegal, right outside of courtrooms when so many of these people are trying to do it the right way. It's
Yeah,
wrong.
I heard some of those ICE agents who, coincidentally were black people and on the East Coast were posing as ICE agents. They were actually just citizens using
Then that would be against the law if there's any
dressing as
proof.
ICE agents
If
to
that, if
capture
you,
and molest and
then
rape women. So that's pretty
Okay,
crazy
so
too.
if you can give me a specific case of a specific person that you're talking about, I would entertain that. And I don't know of any black person who
They
showed
were
up.
black that did that. Actually,
You were just
I
making
was
that up.
being a
Okay, that's a
no, no, I
that's
wasn't making it up. It actually
okay.
did happen. I can't give you the name,
Then
but
if
I
that
can
did,
send it to you.
okay, well,
Yeah, that
if
did
that did
happen.
happen,
I'm just bringing that
then
up
it's wrong.
because it's something recently that
Just
happened
as
where
bad as if a white person did it.
right, but oddly enough, the media, when they brought it to the attention, I believe it was MSNBC, presented a photo of a white man dressed as an ICE agent as the article picture. But if you actually read the details of the article of the two people who posed as ICE agents to rape this woman, they were both black. So I think that's kind of interesting too, how they will use a white person in their media portrayal, but then you actually have to investigate to determine
So you're
whether or
more
not they're
upset
actually.
at a member of the media or a network that may have misconstrued or said the wrong
No,
race.
I'm answering your question from earlier when you
Right, but
said,
you brought this up.
do I condemn or do I not like misinformation? And I agree, I don't like misinformation from any source, whether it's the left or the right. But in particular, I'm just saying that as an example of we can kind of do this back and forth dance, forever. At the end of the day, your fundamental approach, your opinion, and what you believe is just different than mine. And I don't think that I'm anti-human. I don't think I'm anti-American. I don't think that I'm particularly like a white supremacist where I want to hinder or harm any other race or person, especially if they're American. I think I'm a nationalist. And I think I concern myself with the well-being and benefit of all Americans. I don't like the manipulation being utilized in the media to deter us from taking a nationalist unified approach. I don't like that they're trying to create racial division.